How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports Talk YouTube channel. Brendan and Sterling coming for week number one game predictions this week. Again, if you are new to the channel, this is something that we do every single year where we predict every single game. Typically, the Thursday games we'll do a separate video for, but for the Saturday games the Sunday games and the Monday games are done right here on this one, separated from our normal podcast, so make sure to check out both of those. Obviously, we already had the Cowboys taking on the Eagles on Thursday, where the Eagles won 24-20, and then last night on Friday night, where the Kansas City Chiefs took on the Chargers, where the Chargers won 27-21. But our first game that we are going to be talking about here, Sterling, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And this should be a fairly interesting game because it is one of those divisional matchups. We're having a lot of divisional games this week. It almost feels like every single game is a divisional game, it seems like. But you have the Falcons that are pretty much starting a new regime. Michael Penix is going to be the starting quarterback. They have some weapons there on offense. They're a really, really interesting team. But I still, at the moment, think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the superior unit. I think they, without a doubt, have the better offense. I think they have the better playmakers. I think Bijan Robinson is the better running back out of both sides. But I also think Tampa Bay still has a much better defense than the Falcons. The Falcons drafted a couple edge rushers this year and put a lot of resources into that department. But ultimately, I just think they're still going to be a little too raw, especially in week number one.
Yeah, it'll take some time for that defense to start to build up, but this is a battle of probably the top two teams in this division. I think it's going to be these two battling out to see who wins the division, and I agree. I think the Buccaneers take the early lead in this. They're better in every quadrant of the game except for running back, like you said. The running back is better for the Falcons, but everything else is better on the Tampa Bay side, and so I think the Bucs will win this one.
Yeah, both teams have some really fun looking pieces on offense. Again, Baker Mayfield, the much more experienced quarterback out of both of these two guys. I'm also taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this game. And if you're also watching for the first time, we also pick the spread in these games as well. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are minus 20. So just actually let me get the full spread of what this game is going to be. And the Bucks are minus 1.5 point favorites in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Bucs will take that spread as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think you're going to see this Falcons offense maybe not get off to as hot of a start because Michael Penix had a couple of games last year, but he's essentially still a rookie going up against a fairly decent team. Ne-
Well, it's tough to take that 1.5 point spread as well. Like the odds
yeah.
of it being a 1 point game are very, very low. So
The next game up on our list is another divisional matchup where we have the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Cleveland Browns, where the Cincinnati Bengals are favored by minus 5.5 points.
yeah, I mean, starting out in the AFC North, you got what is one of the favorites against the perennial underdog. The Browns. It's going to be messy. But I'm going to surprise some people here. The hater fuel is out, and the Bengals start slow lately. I'm taking the Browns to upset the Bengals in week one.
Yeah, that's a shock to say the least. Yeah, I don't
I
really have anything to really say
I
to that.
I don't know, man. It's just that Bengals O line really worries me for Joe Burrow, and this Browns D line is stacked. It is going to get after him and get after him fast and early, and that's where my concern lies. Is are they going to get so much pressure that it becomes a scramble game and it ends up just being this dirty, messy game that has like a final score of 13-10 just because Joe Burrow doesn't have the time to operate anything. So Chase Brown has to do all of it. And Chase Brown isn't that guy that can take over a game yet in this league. He's not a Derrick Henry or a Saquon Barkley where we know you can just give it to him and he'll still win you the game. Something tells me that this O line is going to let Joe Burrow down badly this year. Last year it was the defense, which hasn't got that much better, a little bit maybe. The O line is not looking that great for Cincy.
Yeah, I completely disagree with kind of everything that you're saying there. I think this O line, while it's not an elite O line, it's not even necessarily that great of an O line. We've seen Joe Burrow play behind bad O lines and make a Super Bowl. I don't think this is going to be any different. He's playing with full confidence and he's going up against a tough D line that he has gone up against for years and years and years already, having to face Myles Garrett. And
Mhm.
I think all you need to do if you're the Bengals and you're worried about that defensive line is have a couple of quick throws to Jamar Chase and just let him do his thing. Have a couple of quick throws to T. Higgins or Tyler Higbee. Hell, even get the ball out in space to Chase Brown and watch him work. And I just don't think the Browns offense is really going to do much of anything because when you look at that, they essentially have two rookie running backs in their backfield. One isn't going to play because he just signed his contract either last night or today. And then the other, while I like Dylan Sampson, we'll have to see how much he gets. And yeah, I do think the Bengals are ultimately going to win this game, and I think they're actually going to cover that 5.5 point spread.
Yeah.
Next game up here on our list is the Miami Dolphins taking on the Indianapolis Colts, where the Indianapolis Colts are favored by -1.5.
That is wild.
Yep.
We've talked about it at length through training camp in the preseason, where the Colts are one of our 2 to 3 teams that we're looking at getting that first overall pick this year. We don't think they're going to be good with Daniel Jones, beating out Anthony Richardson for that job. Yes, there are question marks with Miami. Their defense is just Swiss cheese. So if Daniel Jones is going to be able to look good, it might be here in week 1. But I just until I see Tua start to struggle in some way, or Tyreek Hill not quite have that step, or Devon Achan go down with an injury or something like that. And even then, the Miami Dolphins backfield is pretty stacked. 1, 2, and 3 all are potential top 10 running backs at some point in their career coming. And so I just don't see how anybody could be favoriting the Colts in this one. I'm taking the Dolphins to win this and obviously cover that spread.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Dolphins to not only cover that spread but to win this game. I've been saying this for a little bit now where I think people are sitting back and saying this Dolphins team is going to be one of those like 4 to 5 win teams this season. While I don't think the Miami Dolphins are going to do anything special this year, I don't think they're even necessarily going to go to the playoffs. I don't see them being a 4 to 5 win team. I see them being closer to an 8 to 9 win team. That offense, even with all the injuries and clusterfuckery that they had going on last year, they were still competing for a playoff spot going into the final week of the season. And yes, their defense is a little bit of Swiss cheese, but you have a healthy Tua, you have a healthy Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Devon Achan has been fully cleared. He's not even questionable if you have him in fantasy right now, like I do. It's just one of those things where when this Miami team is offense, particularly, is fully healthy, they're a really tough unit to stop. 2 years ago, this offense put up 70 points against the Denver Broncos. Like, let's be honest here. Like this is a team that can put up a lot of points, and frankly, it's not like we're talking about the Colts defense being great either.
No, no, that 70-point game was like at least 2 concussions ago though for Tua.
Yes.
So I mean that's a big concern.
Yeah, but point I'm still making that point
Yeah.
of I do think that is where that ultimately leads. But yeah, we pretty much have the exact same picks there. Next game up on our list is the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the New England Patriots, where the New England Patriots are -2.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean this is kind of a story of 2 teams that are trying to rebuild and become, you know, competitive again. I think the Patriots have done a better job of it thus far. The Raiders have got some great draft picks in the last couple of years. They got some great talent. I think it's going to take a few weeks for them to get gelled and get rolling, though. And so I think the Patriots have just a better defense that's going to be able to stop Geno Smith from doing everything he may want to do. And I think the Patriots are going to be able to win this game. I think they'll cover that spread as well.
See, I'm actually going to have a different pick to you. Is both teams are having a new head coach this year, but both are getting an experienced head coach at the helm. Patriots getting Mike Vrabel and the Raiders getting Pete Carroll. Both have had some really interesting off seasons, and both teams have improved. And I'm sitting back looking at this Patriots team going, their defense is a lot better, or they got a lot more pieces in that defense this offseason. But when you look at the offense, sure they brought on Stefan Diggs, but he's coming off an injury, and he's on the very wrong side of 30. Where I think he's 33 years old at this point, where we start to see wide receivers at the age of 32 start to take a drastic nosedive downwards. And when I look at the Raiders, they have a good old line. They have an upgrade massively at quarterback. I think they actually have an upgraded wide receiver room this year as well, even with Amari Cooper signing with the team and then 2 weeks later ultimately retiring. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the podcast, so make sure to tune in a little bit later this week to watch that. But, Jaquan Thornton, the 5th round pick, is looking like people are talking about him being like a Puka Nacua type player. Jack Beck is a really, really fun looking wide receiver. He's in the 2nd round. Obviously, getting Ashton Genty is huge. Again, with that Raiders team, I do feel a lot of concern with that defense. But one thing we do know about Pete Carroll is he has the ability to take a defense and improve it a bunch. Darian Porter, that corner, is someone who I really, really liked coming out of the draft, and he's a perfect fit for Pete Carroll. And for me, I'm just looking at this going, which team is going to have the better offense? And I think, and it feels weird for me to say that the Raiders are going to have a better offense than a team. Again, with Ashton Genty, one of the most talented running backs you can see. Brock Bowers, I don't know if there's anyone who can cover that guy. And with the talent there at wide receiver, if Jacoby Myers takes his head out of his ass and actually decides to play, the Raiders actually have a decent looking offense, and that's the reason why I'm taking the Raiders here. And and again, I'm obviously taking the Raiders to cover that spread.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I get that. Like this was a tough one for me to choose, and I do think the Raiders will have the better offense. I just think the Patriots will be better at controlling the pace of play. That's why I went that way with it.
Nope, totally. Like that's one of those weird games of the week where it's going to be surprisingly good to watch, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like it's not our like game pick of the week, because again, if you're also new, we will pick a game of the week that both of us think, we don't necessarily have to choose the same game, but most of the time when it comes to the game pick of the week, we're pretty solid. But we also choose a toilet bowl game of the week, which again is one of those games where it's like, this is going to be just awful football to
yeah.
watch in the entirety of it. This is kind of one of those games where it was not necessarily a game of the week, but one where you're definitely going to be interested to watch it. But moving forward to our next game, where we have the Arizona Cardinals taking on the New Orleans Saints, and the Cardinals are -6.5 point favorites.
Yeah, favored by basically a touchdown, and that makes sense. The Saints are burning. Like it's bad in New Orleans right now. They have a better shot of getting the first overall pick than the Colts, who we talked about earlier. The Cardinals, I mean, this is like a make or break year for both Kyler Murray and Gannon. Like if they don't at least fight for a playoff spot, let alone get a playoff spot, I think they're both gone at the end of this year. And so I think the Cardinals, we're going to see a little bit more desperation and a little bit more just run and gun. Like they're going to go all out a lot this year. And I think we see them have a significant blowout of the Saints team where, at the end of this week, we may be looking at the Cardinals and people will be talking, going, wow, are these guys maybe a contender? Just because they're going to look so good against such a bad team here.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it right away. I think the Cardinals win this game. I think they cover that spread fairly easily. This game has the makeup of where it's kind of like that Alabama going up against, like, let's say San Jose State, where you're just kind of looking at things going like there's one team, or you know what, maybe not even like a level of it like an Alabama going up against the San Jose State. It's like this is like, I'm trying to find a decent equivalent, like Iowa State going up against like Delaware, where it's just
Yeah.
kind of one of those things. It's like you clearly have one team that is just a better constructed roster. The Saints, they're the team that I have picked and have money on to go the worst record in football this year. And I don't have faith in Spencer Rattler. I think that offense is going to be an absolute train wreck. The Cardinals defense did get better this year. And if Kyler Murray can learn how to hit Marvin Harrison Jr. and Marvin Harrison Jr. can learn how to actually run routes in the NFL, then that's going to be a really good connection. But yeah, this isn't necessarily one of those games where I think it's going to be just one team just outduels the other. It's just a situation where you have a good team versus a really, really bad one. And I easily see the Cardinals winning this one.
Right, and I mean, really, because that Saints team is so bad, this is very much a contender for the toilet bowl of the week, just because they are so bad. Because a lot of the week one games are very competitive matchups. It's tough
Yeah.
to pick a toilet bowl this week.
Yeah, I do have my toilet bowl game of the week. It is not the Cardinals versus Saints.
No.
Um, but our next game up on the list is your Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the New York Jets. It is the revenge game for Justin Fields, but it's also the revenge game for Aaron Rodgers.
Yep, and it's first look at Aaron Rodgers for Steelers fans because we all know he doesn't play in preseason. He's too good for that. So that's concerning because you always like to have a guy have a few reps in there to begin with, but it is Aaron Rodgers. He is a veteran. He usually doesn't need as much time to turn it on. And so I'm interested to see what the connection is, who he ends up getting those connections with. Is it going to be DK Metcalf or Pat Fryermuth or Jonnu Smith? I'm not sure. I don't know if this is going to be a big offensive, shootout style game. I think we might see a lot of Jalen Warren. He just signed a 2-year extension. It sounds like this team plans to run on that or lean on that run game a lot, which makes sense in an Arthur Smith offense. Try to make it so Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to do everything. He can hand the ball off a lot, and then when it's like, okay, it's third medium, we need a first down. Aaron, go do what you do. So I'm interested to see. I'm a Steelers fan, so I'm always going to be happy to watch them. I hope it goes well, but I could also be crying by the end of the first drive when it's an ugly 3-and-out, and I go, oh, here we go again. But I'm picking the Steelers to win. What's the spread in the game?
Minus 2.5 for Pittsburgh.
-2.5. Oh yeah, Pittsburgh covers that spread as well because they'll win by a field goal.
Yeah, so I look at this game and I go, you have a situation with both teams where I like both defenses. I think the Steelers are going to have one of the best defenses in the NFL. You are a little bit more leaning towards this is probably going to be a historic level defense. I'm not on that level. I also like the Jets defense. I think they also have a fairly solid defense. And again, getting the new head coach that they have, and I don't know why I'm all of a sudden forgetting his name off the top of my head, but he comes over from the Lions. But he was a really, really good defensive coordinator. And one thing that we know about DC's when they get that head coaching job is that defense immediately takes a big step, especially in year number one, because it's that fresh idea, that new head coach going to just be able to kind of just take it. Aaron Glenn is who
Yeah.
finally came back to it. Both offenses, I think, are terrible. And I'll go out and say it. This is my toilet bowl game of the week because you're going to watch the Jets with Justin Fields, who his over under for passing yards this year is 2,500 yards,
Yeah.
which is not a high bar. like most quarterbacks that are high end talented are getting past that by week 8 or sometimes week 10 at the latest.
Hmm.
But I struggle with what the Jets are going to do on the offensive side of the ball. But then I look at the Steelers and I go, well, I've said it before. I think this is just a cut, copy, paste version of the Steelers offense we saw last year. Just it's that magic. Oh yeah, you can copy my homework, just change it up a little bit. And we saw Aaron Rodgers now move in as quarterback. While I think it's an upgrade over Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, it's an upgrade in the same way of going to a Honda Civic is like going to like a Kia Forte.
Yeah.
Again, that's probably not even a good analogy for that one, but George Pickens, then you go to DK Metcalf, you lose Najee Harris, you replace him with Caleb Johnson. I really like Caleb Johnson, but Arthur Smith is still calling plays. But at the end of the day, I am going to choose the Steelers to win this game because I do think that defense is going to be vastly superior than what we see the Jets defense. But I think it's going to be the Chris Boswell show again this year. And I
Yep.
think you're going to see him kicking a lot of field goals, which is great for me in fantasy. And but yeah, I do have the Steelers winning this game, and I do have them covering the spread. But like I said, this is my toilet bowl game of the week. The fact that
That's fair.
the point spread in this one is 37.5
Yeah.
says a lot. That is the only point spread this week that is in the 30s.
Yeah. No, and I mean that makes sense. Like they're basing that off of what this Steelers offense has been for the last 2 to 3 years. Until we see what sort of a relationship and connection Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith have, that's really going to determine what this offense becomes. If they don't gel, then it's going to be the same old shit.
Nope.
11 points, 14 points, 17 points on a good day. If they are on the same page, this could be an offense that's able to put up 25 to 30 points a game. Well, it remains to be seen. That
Yeah.
that's the joy of week 1 is we don't really know what we're necessarily going to get out of there. I mean, we saw that in both Thursday and Friday night's games. There were guys where we were like, you're supposed to be good. Where are you? And others where it's like, when did you learn to catch? So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what this is going to become.
Without a doubt, it's going to be really interesting, and it's not just necessarily because you bring up a point like every team in week 1. I say nowadays week 1 through 4 is the new preseason in the NFL because you don't know what your team is until week 5 really at that point. But yeah, nonetheless, moving forward to our next game where we have the Washington Commanders taking on the New York Giants, and the Commanders are -6.5 point favorites in this game.
Yep, rest of the NFC East going at it here, and this is going to be a fun one to watch. I will say that because we saw how explosive Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, and that Washington offense was last year. They got better on the O line, so Jaden Daniels is going to have more time to find targets. So we might start seeing some of the other guys get involved more. There's a lot of excitement around their new running back. They traded away Brian Robinson Jr. just to get him higher up on the depth chart, and they do still have Austin Eckler there as well. And so that this Washington team is going to be good to watch this year. It's going to be fun. And the Giants, I believe right now it's Russell Wilson that has the starting job, so it's going to be we'll see a couple moon balls to Malik Neighbors. That'll be fun until he gets benched and we get Jameis Winston in there. That's when the real fun begins for the New York Giants.
Jameis Winston, third on the depth chart at quarterback for the Giants.
For now, I think that's really just posturing. It's to build Jackson Dart's confidence. Jameis Winston, he's not going to take a hit to his ego by being listed third on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that says that, if you replace a quarterback, oh, you have to use the second guy first.
No,
Like,
no, this is true.
so that's where, after this Giants depth chart for QB is very bizarre. So it'll be fun to watch. Washington's going to win this because they're easily going to be able to put up more points. I don't remember how many quarters they went last year where they didn't punt the ball at all. It was score or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're going to be fun. Washington's going to win this, and they're going to easily win it by more than a touchdown.
Yeah, I look at this and go, obviously, the biggest thing for the Commanders, obviously, their O line got a lot better. They actually got some more weapons, but Cliff Kingsbury is the returning OC. That's huge. Jaden Daniels doesn't have to learn a new system. He gets to go into
Mhm.
year number 2 of his NFL career in the same system, and that's going to give him a level of comfort that sometimes you just don't see from rookie quarterbacks, especially after some early success. I think you're going to see this offense be really, really explosive. The big thing that this offense is going to have to worry about is that D line wrecking havoc. Because again, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and then our second overall pick, Abdul Carter, and then don't forget Dexter Lawrence. That is arguably one of the best D line in all of football. If you can just have four of those four guys out there rushing the quarterback, you could genuinely have it be a situation of where you get at Jalen Daniels on every single play. And if the Giants want any hope at winning this game, it's going to be their D line causing so much havoc that Jalen Daniels has no time to do anything, even with this brand new offensive line that they've built. But with that being said, I look at the Giants offense and go, okay, you have Malik Neighbors, and you have Malik Neighbors, and that's it. And I don't think this Commanders defense is all that good. I think Malik Neighbors is going to have a good day, but I don't think this Commanders defense is bad enough to allow Malik Neighbors to burn them as badly enough to the point where the Giants win. So I'm taking the Commanders to win this game, and I do think they are going to cover that 6.5 point spread. Taking a look here at our next game, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Carolina Panthers, where the Jags are minus 3.5 point favorites.
Yeah, this was kind of my other contender for Toilet Bowl because the Panthers are not fun to watch. They haven't been for a few years. Maybe that turns around this year, but until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. The Jags, they're in the same boat as they've been for the last 4 years, where we're like, this is the year they have to take the step. This is the year they have to take that step. Well, are they going to do it now? Now they've got Travis Hunter as well as Brian Thomas Jr. And can Brian Thomas Jr. continue at the start of this year what he finished last year doing? And if he does, then he's making a strong case for himself being in the top 10 for wide receivers in this league. Um, I have more faith in the Jags all around in every area of the game, and so I'm taking the Jags to win this game and cover that spread.
Yeah, I think I've been pretty vocal on my level of skepticism about this Panthers team. And particularly when it comes to what we see from Bryce Young. Again, the Panthers had easily the worst defense in the NFL last year. Now, we saw them make some moves to try to get that team a little bit better, but they don't really have much of a pass rush. They're hoping for Derek Brown to kind of be the answer. They drafted Princely Umanumelu from Ole Miss last year, who I think is going to be fun. They also drafted Nick Scorton, but these are a lot of young players that you're hoping that can at least go up against an offense. Liam Cohen, the new head coach of the Jags, to me, he has that feeling very much of like a Matt Nagy, of where he's going to have a really fun and interesting offense for the Jags in year number 1. But I think that's all it's going to be, is kind of like a year 1 of like, oh, this was actually like a surprisingly fun offense to watch. But with that being said, I think the Jags have a fairly decent defensive line. I think they have a fairly okay defense in general. While the Panthers did get better in the receiver game with Tet McMillan, and I think they have like a third round pick from last year who's also taking that step. Um, I just don't think it's going to be enough for this Panthers team to get this win in week 1. This was, again, also a game where I could look at and go, this could potentially be a toilet bowl game of the week. But I do have the Jags winning, And you know what? I do have them covering that spread just because it's these are just two teams I don't want to watch at all this season. Like they just have zero interest to me whatsoever. But yeah, I do think the Jags ultimately come away with the win. Next game up on our list is the Denver Broncos taking on the Tennessee Titans. Bo Nix versus Cam Ward, where the Broncos are minus 8.5 point favorites.
Yeah, that's a hefty favorite, but I mean, you're going up against a rookie quarterback, and this Broncos team got better on offense and defense in the offseason. They're going to be trying to compete in the AFC West, but they saw what the two teams they're going to be looking at up at did on Friday night. So they're going to have to really come out strong, and I think they'll manage. You know, this Broncos team against the Titans of all things, like the Titans are not going to be good. This is a figure it out year for them. You know, is Cam Ward going to be able to be the guy going forward? If so, let's figure out what his strengths are and find the pieces to put around him. And so I don't expect to see a lot out of the Titans team, especially through the first 6 to 10 weeks. After that, we might see them turn a little bit of a corner, but for now, I think the Broncos win this one. It's hard to take an 8.5 point spread. Is this in Denver or in Tennessee?
Let me look, but it is in Denver.
It is in Denver, then the Broncos cover that spread.
Yeah, I look at this particular game and go, the Broncos might have one of the best defenses in the NFL this year. They were a really good defense last year, and they added pieces to just make it that much better. And I think they're going to feast on this rookie quarterback. You're listening to Titans press conferences where Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans, is talking about the offense and going like, "Oh, I think we're going to surprise people." And Cam Ward saying, "I really like our wide receiver room. I don't think we have a problem here." I like Cam Ward. I thought he was the clear-cut best quarterback in last year's draft. With that being said, this is too much. This is too much for a rookie quarterback to be going up against in week number one to have success. I think the Titans are going to have a horrific day in Denver. I think the Broncos not only cover that spread, but they might even double that point.
Mhm.
Next game up, we have another divisional matchup where we have the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks, where the 49ers are minus 1.5 point favorites.
Yeah, this is a game I might change my pick on the fly here. Do you know, is this in Seattle?
Let me check. I do believe it is in Seattle, and yes, it is.
Because the 49ers really struggle going into Seattle to win. And I think that that's what's going to happen. So I'm going to change my pick on the fly. I had the 49ers to win this, but being in Seattle and seeing how the 49ers perform there in the last couple of years, they're missing a lot more pieces. No Ayuk, as far as I know. We don't know what's happening with Christian McCaffrey. I know Kyle Shanahan says he's going to play, but his calf is bugging him now. So how much will he play? This 49ers team overall, offense and defense, because a lot of the players that the Chiefs and the Broncos picked up were 49ers players that left, and so they got an identity to figure out. And I don't think they're going to know what it is in week one going into Seattle, one of the most hostile stadiums to go and play in. I think the Seahawks win this game.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fairly close game. Again, that 1.5 point spread. It's basically who do you think is going to ultimately win the game. I do think these 49ers are going to be able to get this win. When I look at the 49ers, I think they have taken a step back this year in terms of what their offense and defense is. However, with that being said, getting Robert Saleh back as your defensive coordinator is huge. And yes, Christian McCaffrey is dealing with stuff, but when I look at the Seahawks and I look at that offense, right now here in week number one, We don't know what Sam Darnold is as a quarterback, especially after last year, where he had an offense where he had one of the best wide receivers in football in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison as his number two wide receiver. Then he had TJ Hawkinson. He had Aaron Jones as his running back. Now he goes to the Seahawks where he has Jackson Smith and Jigba as his number one receiver, who is probably on par with Jordan Addison, but you have Cooper Kupp, who is quite old at this point and hasn't really been able to build consistent seasons these last couple of years due to injuries. You have the question mark at running back as well. You don't have any pass catching tight end as far as I'm concerned with Seattle. And again, I just don't trust Mike McDonald to be able to coach this team up to get the win. And I think Kyle Shanahan, Brock Purdy's coming off of that big payday this offseason, so it's going to be Kyle Shanahan and Brock saying, listen, let's show the NFL why you deserved that contract. And I do think the 49ers will win, and I do think they will cover that spread. Next game up on our list is an NFC North matchup where we have the Detroit Lions taking on the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay, where they have a 1.5 point spread.
The Lions have the spread favorite.
Packers do.
Oh, the Packers are the favorite just because it's in Green Bay.
Yeah.
Packers are beat up right now, though. They had a rough preseason, a rough training camp. You know, the wide receivers, even the ones that are coming back, you got to wonder how healthy are they really? And so for me, that's a big concern. And then this Packers defense, it's not elite, you know, whereas the Lions, they stayed mostly the same. It's going to be difficult and interesting to see what happens losing both your coordinators. That does have an impact. But really, the talent on the field is what's going to decide whether or not you win. And I think there is more talent for Detroit than there is for Green Bay. And so I think the Detroit Lions are going to go into Lambeau in week 1 and still pull out a win.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are talking about this Green Bay offense, or pardon me, defense being this next level defense with Micah Parsons. We need to remember Micah Parsons has not done anything this offseason. He's dealing with a back issue. He might not even play this weekend to begin with. And if he doesn't play, well then this Packers defense just goes back to what we were saying it was beforehand, where it has an okay defensive line. Can we really talk about the linebacking core? Like who's in that linebacking core? And then when we talk about the secondary, it's McKinney and who else? And funny enough, as I was on an elevator yesterday talking with someone, I said, well, you can only do so much with a safety. Like a center field safety can only do so much in a secondary. The Lions still have all of their main pieces. They still have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the run game. They still have a pretty good offensive line. Jared Goff's still throwing the football to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameis Winston or Williams. Sam Laporta's still there. Brock Wright is still there as the backup tight end. Then you go back on defense. I know you're not a believer in what Aiden Hutchinson is going to do this year, but he's back healthy. They drafted some more defensive linemen. That defense is still really, really good. And yeah, fuck the Packers. So I'm taking the Lions to win this game.
Yeah.
And cover the spread. Next up, we have the Houston Texans taking on the LA Rams, where the Rams are -3.5 point favorites.
Yeah, this would be a really fun game to watch if the Houston Texans knew how to build an offensive line, but they don't. And so this game is going to single-handedly be why I think at the end of week 1, we see Jared Verse leading the list for most sacks in the league. Jared Verse is going to have a game, and it's going to make it easy for Matt Stafford to not have to do too much. You know, he was dealing with some back issues through the offseason, so we don't know if he's 100% or 90% or what. But, I mean, this Rams offense is still great. You got Kyron Williams. You got Blake Corum. You know, you got Puka Nacua still. They added Devontae Adams. The Texans have a great quarterback, some great wide receivers. some really good talent on defense, but that O line is going to hold them back so much this year. I think we see them take a further step back from year two, even. Unfortunately, I think CJ Stroud will have the stats, but they're not going to be able to be winning games. I don't think. I think the Rams win this game, and I think Jared Verse lights up that sack scoreboard.
Yeah, I look at this and go, I think the Texans have an upgrade at their wide receiver position. Their running game, I think, they got Nick Chubb in. We can only count on Nick Chubb for a handful of weeks until inevitably something happens to one of his knees, which just seems to be the norm. Which is a shame because Nick Chubb is one of the most entertaining running backs in all of football to watch. That offensive line does scare me. It was the second most sacked offensive line in all of football last year. They traded away that best piece. They didn't really add anything in free agency. They drafted one tackle in the first round, but going up against the reigning defensive rookie of the year is going to be a tough, tough matchup. With that being said, I do think the Texans have the best defense in football this year. That is going to be really, really good. And when you have the werewolf in Daniil Hunter and the Terminator in Will Anderson Jr. coming off the edges going against the Rams, it's not like the Rams have an elite O line. Matthew Stafford is not mobile. He can still
No.
sling the ball, but he's not a mobile quarterback anymore. Not like he ever was this massive mobile quarterback to begin with. I think this is going to be a little bit of a closer game than you maybe give it credit to because of how good that Texans defense is going to be. But with this being Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford going out there, I think Puka Nacua dealt with so many injuries last year. He's going to be fully healthy. Devonte Adams has kind of this new lease on his football career, going like, you know what? I was kind of thrown away by the Raiders, and then I was kind of thrown away by the Jets at the end of the year. I got to choose where I wanted to go this time, and I'm choosing a really good offensive minded in Sean McVay. I still think the Rams have a little bit of a younger defense that's still going to try to get things going, but I do think the Rams are going to win this game. But I actually think the Texans are going to cover that 3.5 point spread. Our next game up on our list is the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Buffalo Bills in our Sunday night matchup, where the Baltimore Ravens are 1.5 or minus 1.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday Night Football Week 1, great matchup choice by the NFL. A battle of the last two MVPs in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And, what a lot of people are arguing could be the battle for this year's MVP as well between these two guys. A lot of people are pinning them both as favorites. Um, I don't think there's enough talent around Josh Allen yet for him to consistently get past the good teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens. And as a result, I mean, you got the Baltimore Ravens with a fresh, healthy Derrick Henry week 1. We see what he can do when he's feeling fresh. Like, I would not be shocked to see him put up over 100 yards, maybe even approach that 150 mark, against this Bills defense that isn't great. I think the Ravens win this game.
This was a tough, tough pick for me because I could see either team ultimately coming away with the win. This game is in Buffalo, which makes this a little bit of a tougher situation for Baltimore to come into. For me, this comes down to who I think is simply just the better quarterback. And I think Josh Allen is a much better quarterback than Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson, he has those flashy running plays that really take him off, and he's gotten a lot better with his throwing ability. I will never not say that Lamar Jackson hasn't improved consistently year in, year out with his passing, but Josh Allen, he's a different animal, man. Like this is a guy that can run for 100 yards in a game if he wants to, and not just make like miss guys. He's going to try to take your guys' head off with his running ability. Like, he's going to go through you as opposed to around you, which, I mean, if you're the head coach of the Bills, you're terrified every single time you see him do that because you're like, please don't separate your shoulder. But
Mhm.
I think this is going to be a game where Josh Allen, coming off the MVP award last year, he's sitting back and saying, this is probably the most comfortable that I've ever been in his life. Again, married this offseason. I think we're going to see the Bills ultimately pull away this win. If this was in Baltimore, I might have it switched around. It's just going to be really hard for both teams. And for me, it comes down who I think is the better quarterback in this game. And I think Josh Allen is simply the better quarterback. And that's why I'm picking them. So I'm also picking them to win on the spread. And for our final game of the week, on Monday Night Football, we have the Minnesota Vikings going into Chicago to take on my Chicago Bears, where the Vikings are 1.5-point favorites.
Which is gotta be scary for you having your team be a favorite in week one.
Oh
That
no,
doesn't
they're
happen very
they're
often.
an underdog in week one.
Oh, I thought you said Bears were the
Yeah,
spread. My bad.
minus one and a
Um,
half points for Mini.
gotcha. Um, this can be a good game. You know, good rivalry game. Good litmus test for where the Bears are to start out the year and what Ben Johnson has been able to do thus far. So I'm interested to see what happens. I unfortunately won't get to watch this game as I'll be at work, but I don't know. There's too many question marks in Minnesota right now with JJ McCarthy. Is he going to be like, can Kevin O'Connell just make him good? Or is there going to be that growing pains? For that reason alone, I'm going to go with the quarterback that's got that little bit more experience with, in my opinion, a better play caller in Ben Johnson, and just hope that the Bears can control the pace of the game. I think the Bears will win. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a stressful game for both Bears and Vikings fans. Um, but I think the Bears squeak out a win.
Yeah, this is this was a tough game for me because, as many people know, me being a Bears fan, I am skeptical as hell with anything this team and organization does, whether it's positive or negative. They've kind of done everything I've asked them to do, which is a draft Caleb Williams, draft him a bunch of really good, talented offensive pieces to throw the ball to, get an offensive line in front of him, get him the best offensive mind, one of the best offensive minds in all of football to be his head coach. So they've kind of done everything I've said for them to do at this point. I think Caleb, there's going to be moments in this game where the offense, you're kind of looking at it going like, what the hell are they doing? But there's also going to be a bunch of moments where you're like, oh, this is going to be a problem if they are allowed to continue to do this. Again, the offensive line was a lot better. If Minnesota allows Caleb Williams to just basically hit the back of his drop and immediately throw the ball and he's comfortable, Minnesota's going to be screwed all night. Because we saw what happened when Caleb did that against the Bills in preseason. If you allow him to just kind of sit back at the top of his drop, make a quick read, toss it, it's game over. And that's what Ben Johnson wants Caleb Williams to do. The other big thing is I look at what happened in these matchups last year for Caleb Williams against this Brian Flores defense. Caleb Williams played pretty well against Brian Flores with worse offensive play calling and a worse offensive line. So the skeptic in me is screaming, don't pick the Bears. You know they're just going to screw it up and disappoint you. But the analyst in me goes, this is the Bears game to win because JJ McCarthy, when he was at Michigan, they did not pass the ball a ton. Kevin O'Connell's offense, they're going to be asking him to pass the ball a ton. Yes, he has Justin Jefferson, or he's not going to have Jordan Addison in this game. He has TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason. There's a lot of talent there. I think the Bears win this game and they cover that spread, and I'm making a prediction here. I think the Bears offense is going to kind of run away with this one, which, saying that, makes me want to vomit because I know it's just going to come back to bite me in the ass. But yeah, that's where that's where I'm gonna go with that one. But that is going to be it for this week's game predictions. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much. Peace.